that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, I don't know why the camera quality is looking so poopy today, but welcome to Middle Earth, I guess. I was gonna discuss the Silmarillion. I don't know if I did or didn't, just because I don't know what I can really say that hasn't been said before about that book. Maybe another time. But I did make a promise, and I try very hard to hold true to my promises. So, I have for you Rings of Power, the Amazon original show, Season 1, which takes place during the Second Age. There's 3 ages. This is during the Second. Most of the super duper interesting stories are in the First Age. And not to say that this isn't interesting, but it does require a lot more original thought, less adaptation, more creation, because the Second Age doesn't have that much in terms of material to draw from, outside of the fall of Numenor, which we'll also get to. Without spoilers, I mean, this season is a few years old at this point. I just never got around to it. I heard mixed things. I think the season is fine. It's not good. It's not great. It's also not horrendous, like people claimed it is. It simply is. The last episode of the season was probably the best. So in terms of getting me excited for Season 2, well, if the rest of the show is more like how it ended in Season 1, then yes, I'm excited. The show follows a couple different things. We follow these people called Half-Foots, which are just precursors to hobbits. A mysterious man falls from the sky and befriends one of the Half-Foots. We have Galadriel, who had a brother who died during the war with Sauron and Melkor, and has since been looking to eradicate all signs of Sauron from the face of the earth. She's been on a revenge quest for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Elrond is to go see an old pal named Durin. For what, he doesn't really know. He's tasked to do so, mainly because he is an old friend of Durin's. And then we have the entire Numenor plotline. Eventually, Galadriel finds herself in this city of Numenor with another character original to this show named Halbrand, who's an interesting character in its own right. And without spoilers, it's about the most that I can probably give you. But like I said, nothing about the plot is bad to me. I overall like the gist of where everything's going. I think pacing-wise, I think structurally, some of the writing too, some of the writing came off as, how can we sound like Tolkien? And it just didn't. Like the first episode, Galadriel's brother says something about, like dropping a rock into the water or whatever, and darkness, and it was a whole thing that was meant to sound very poetic and very beautiful, but it just kind of fell flat. Galadriel herself is hard to enjoy because of her personality right now, which is part of the point, but there are still ways of making an unlikable character someone you want to root for and want to watch every week, I don't feel it really nailed that. At least in Season 1. I haven't seen Season 2 yet, which I hear is a remarkable improvement. Elrond and Durin were probably my favorite sections of the entire thing. How everything wrapped up at the end of Season 1 I also quite enjoyed, though I did also find it a little bit corny. That being said, do I recommend it? Well, here's the thing. Do you like the Jackson films? This might be an adjustment. Do you hate the Jackson films because they don't adhere explicitly to the books? You actually might enjoy this more. Do you like the films and the books? Your mileage may vary on this show. But I did not treat this as a prequel to the films. I treated it as its own thing. So I try to enjoy it as it stands on its own. You know, of course, I read the books all the way back in like middle school. So it's probably high time I read them again as a proper adult since I was an adolescent last time I touched these. Silmarillion I've not read twice. But as to the actual Lord of the Rings and then, of course, the only other thing that I'll say before we get into spoilers, because I just think it's important to mention. People of color. Weird transition, right? Well, back when the show first came out, people made an explicitly big deal about this. Now, I don't express myself too much on certain topics on this channel, because I'm here to discuss books. You don't need to know what I personally think, one way or the other. I'm very in the middle when it comes to a lot of things. I refuse to go one large way or the other in today's current climate, because I try my hardest to look at everyone as individuals and as people, not to other people and go, you're a monster, you're stupid, you're stupid. No. You're both stupid for not being able to work it out. You're choosing to fight and fight and fight. But I'm one person, and I will not save the world. I'm a hobbit, and I will never be an Aragorn, so I'm not going to bother trying. People of color. Now, as far as I remember from Lord of the Rings, it never explicitly mentions a person of color in the world. Nor does it explicitly mention that they don't exist either. Now again, this might have something to do with the time in which Tolkien wrote it, for as progressive as he was, you know, when you think back to when the Germans, you know, I don't remember the full specifics, but about making Lord of the Rings come to Germany, and he stuck up for the Jews, you know. But he still is a man of his time, right? So, whether or not it just didn't come to mind, or it was an explicit exclusion, which I doubt, the lore is not hurt by including people of color. So by no means does it bug me that there are people of color in this show. It doesn't really matter to me. It is at most set dressing. You know, even if you want to be more pedantic about it, nobody that's super duper important to the lore gets changed. Galadriel's still a white blonde lady. Elrond is still white. But yeah, sure, we have some elves that are original characters to this show that are black. Or half-foots that are black. Or people in Numenor that are black. And I don't see that as an issue. If anything, if we're going to go with diversity, we should go a little bit harder. Because so far, I think I've seen mainly black people, and like, I don't know what Isildur's supposed to be. But if you're gonna go all the way, then where's the Asians? Where's the Indians? Where's the Hispanics? You know, just go all the way with it if you're gonna do it. But no, that doesn't bug me. The other thing is the sexism thrown to the show as well when it comes to Galadriel. Now, do you like the films? Because those films are the same films that had Legolas jumping across elephants and doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff like it was nothing as one skinny, scrawny man. So I don't want to hear it. There's nothing that Galadriel does that I couldn't see any other person doing. In fact, people who claim that this goes against the lore, you have only watched the Peter Jackson films, because if you actually read the Silmarillion, you would know that there is a sentence in there. I don't have the page on me right now, but if you want to be on my case about it, I can send you the page in the description. But it explicitly states that she did at one point was a warrior. So that fits. So I don't want to hear that. It's ridiculous if people say that. You're silly. You're silly. Go get mad about real things, not about TV shows. Okay? That's not a real reason to get upset. But my main point is with the people of color, like, yeah, as long as they're good actors, it really doesn't matter to me. You know, and so far everyone put in a good performance, so I don't have an issue. Now, if all the people they had acting sucked, and it was only because, well, they're not white, then sure. But everybody who was in the show did a phenomenal job. So why am I going to take issue with that? I won't. I will take issue with the pacing, because something I heard from a friend was that, well, the show is much more like the books, where it takes its time. But in a novel, you have the luxury. It is still a different medium. Now, maybe it's okay to be experimental, sure, but a TV show should not be paced like a book. That's why it's a TV show, not a book. And it's just extremely slow in the beginning, and it's not even about the world building. I enjoy all the world building in every episode. It's more so the character stuff is kind of in the wayside early on, and then just, I don't know, something about the show, like, even when there is action, I find myself zoning out. Like, I cannot for the life of me get invested in it. The most I was invested in the show was that final episode. So hopefully that can pull through for season 2. Because I was not feeling that for all of season 1. But I do recommend it, just because there's a lot of heart in it. If you know me, you know I'm a fan of Star Wars, and I'd say objectively this is probably written better than all of the Star Wars prequels, which I love. But the thing is that so many things today may look better, may even be written better, but there's no heart behind it. There's no love behind it, just here's how do we make money. Like, I can say the Star Wars sequels look and are maybe not written better in some areas, but it certainly feels more modern. The dialogue comes off as a little bit more engaging, at least from memory. It's been years since I watched it. But I don't sense any true heart behind it. And I think that's the fundamental issue. Whereas with the prequels, while flawed, I can see the heart and passion that went behind it. So I'm a little bit more forgiving. And the same goes with The Rings of Power, which, even though I admit is objectively better writing. But still, for any flaws it has, I see the heart and the vision behind it. So I am hopeful for an improvement in season 2. So I do recommend it, if you haven't already, to give the show a watch. Again, spoilers, if you don't want that. But yeah. First thing we see is Galadriel almost hit a kid. Way to set a tone. Galadriel's brother gives her a speech. This is when she's like a little kid. It's not that phenomenal. Just kind of whatever. We do get a tiny summary of the Silmarillion's first age, which was cool. Sauron killed Galadriel's brother, which is what sends her on this revenge quest for hundreds of years. I wrote POC. We already discussed it, so I'm not going to discuss it again. Elrond, I have nothing bad to say. The actor playing Elrond, I think, is doing a phenomenal job. Even better than Hugo Weaving. I said what I said. It is what it is. It is interesting seeing elves and their sort of subtle discrimination and the discrimination of elves from other races like humans with elves. There's a lot of tension. Because, actually, this is a conversation I had a little bit earlier today, actually, on a Discord server about the nature of Iluvatar. in terms of being egotistical, which I fundamentally don't think it is logically possible for Iluvatar to be so, based on how, as he's written in the text, is meant to be the moral arbiter by which all other things are judged. So when you like Frodo, when you like Sam, when you like Gandalf, any character that does anything great and good and genuine that you like in a story is a reflection of Iluvatar's character. So I think it is fundamentally impossible for Iluvatar, the god of this universe, to be egotistical. That being said, that does not apply to the elves, because the elves are mortal and they are flawed, and they certainly come off as extremely egotistical in this series. Not Elrond per se, but a lot of the other elves. There's this sort of, even Galadriel has this sort of aura of superiority, and that just comes from living a really long time. It is something that the Silmarillion deals with in terms of, you know, the elves get long life, and then a choice to sail off into heaven. The dwarves are granted a slightly longer life than humans, like up to 200 years or something like that. But the humans die young. They die like, you know, at most you get like 100 something, usually. We do know that there's some humans that live longer than that, but most of them typically it's 100 something. So they live a lot less, but while they live less, they evolve, they grow faster because they have less time. So they push harder. So I think that's a bit interesting. But you see a lot of hatred, maybe hatred's the wrong word, but disdain and animosity toward elves in this first episode. And then we meet the Half-Foots, which are just very much so the hobbits. Just not called that yet. Also, there's an elf. I never wrote down his name. I'm sorry. I don't remember it. It was not memorable. It's an extremely boring part of the show with this elf guy that is like with this human woman, and I just, for the life of me, I tried. I really tried. I don't care in the slightest about him and her, and I feel like they really try to make me care, but they never succeed. I never once cared about this couple at all. So Galadriel's supposed to go sail to heaven. You know, essentially that's what it is. And she jumps off the boat, which leads us into episode 2, where a meteor falls from the sky with the Half-Foots, and we meet this mysterious hobo man. There's also a big giant sea monster back with Galadriel on this boat. And she meets Halbrand, who's this interesting new character. And there's this phenomenal scene between Elrond and Durin, where Elrond goes to see Durin, and Durin's giving him a hard time. And he's like, "What's up?" And Durin's like, "It's been 20 years. I have a wife now, I have kids. I know for you that's not a long time, but for me, you have missed a significant chunk of my life." And Elrond, you know, feels bad, and he apologizes. And the friendship bleeds through the screen. So I love that. Oh, here's the only other thing that I've heard online, complaint-wise. Dwarven women in the text, and this is true, this is a lore inaccuracy, they're supposed to have beards. They're supposed to be hairy. Really? We are going out of our way to nitpick, aren't we? If your biggest problem is that dwarven women don't have beards on the show, I think the show's doing a pretty good job of being lore compliant. If that's your biggest thing to draw from, is that it's inaccurate with the beards. We jump to episode 3. We have this orc camp. We also get to see Numenor in all of its splendor, which is quite beautiful. The Queen of Numenor is not happy about Galadriel being there. They're very much trying to be, because Numenor used to be aligned with the elves, but now they're kind of like isolationists. They don't want anything to do with elves. there's a scene back at the orc camp where an elf's throat gets slit by this orc. And again, it's meant to be very extremely dramatic, and I'm sorry, just for the life of me, I could not care. We're 3 episodes in, and I still really don't care about anyone. And I just think that's a fundamental flaw. I get what they're doing. They're building stuff up for episode 8 and for seasons to come. But you have to make the season satisfying in its own right. Even on a reread, or a rewatch, even while discussing this in hindsight, it still is like... That guy, though, I still do not feel any emotional attachment to. I don't have to know everything this season. That's not the problem. The problem is that you have failed, in my opinion, to make me care about some of these characters early on, where it was treated as such a huge deal. I should have felt that. The music makes it sound like I should. But I don't care. And I don't think that's because I'm heartless. Because I cry over everything, man. I am such a softie. But the show failed to provide me the necessary... See, when I say I don't know exactly what they could have done to have made me care more. But all I know is there could have been more. To make me go, oh no. What a loss. Instead, we just lost the guy. Didn't really know him. So there's no room for me to really feel empathy, which is, I guess, bad of me, right? Because every loss of life is a travesty. And it is. But the human psyche just simply can't comprehend the complexity of every death, every moment of every day. There's somebody dying right now as I speak. But I can't control that, and all that will do is make me go insane. So I can understand the comprehensible when somebody I know dies. But to try to deal with every other person out there that's dying right now, what am I to do? All that to say, though, the whole point of fiction is to make me feel empathetic, to make me care about the characters that you create, as if they are my own family, for the span of those hours that I'm watching. The show failed to make me feel any emotional weight toward that death. We get to meet Isildur back in Numenor. Halvard also claims to be a king, which is interesting. Episode 4, and I think this is going to be more of a thing in Season 2, and here's my biggest thing that we'll see how contentious it is for me as we get to Season 2, but we are humanizing the orcs a little bit. They feel when another one of their kin passes away, they're in mourning. But I'm no Tolkien expert, and I'll never claim to be one. There is some nuances with Tolkien's work. In fact, there was stuff he went back and forth on that he wasn't absolutely certain upon, the orcs being one of them. Because after all, they are just corrupted elves, right? And also, the whole idea of mud pits, and that's where they're created from, is purely a Jackson thing. That is not a thing in the books. They do procreate. I understand that. In terms of being sympathetic, in terms of being actually we're good. It's just the elves, humans, and dwarves that are, discriminating against us. Because as far as most of the Middle-earth lore, they're always antagonistic. They never try to make peace. I don't object to the idea that, orcs have procreation, but the idea that they also have family structures and that they actually, deeply care about their young, which that's more of a Season 2 thing. We haven't really gotten that here. We always see them, feel bad for death of a brother. But I fundamentally see issues with that, because that's not how they're portrayed anywhere, really. It doesn't matter what Tolkien might have done. What matters is what we currently have as of now. So I just don't know about that. And in terms, animals procreate. They even have a sense of, protection for their young. But does a lion, in the same way that your mother Hopefully you have a good mother for an example, otherwise I'm really sorry for bringing up some issues there. I know God knows I have issues in mine. But a mother lion, as opposed to a human mother. A mother lion's like, this is my young, I have to protect it, it's instinct. But a human mother will go, that is my child, which I love. She thinks about it. She dwells on it. What can I do for my kid's Christmas to make his day better, her day better, etc., etc., etc. There's a level to humanity that puts it above animals in terms of our cognitive ability, you know. I would question whether orcs are capable of such. Now, we do see them have conversations, you know, in everything, whether it be the Jackson films to the books themselves a little bit to here. You know, they do have thought. They're not purely animals. But I still would jump back on the idea that they are just like humans and elves and dwarves, but scary looking. I don't know if I buy that. But I know the show's going to push that further in season 2. We shall have to wait and see how that plays out before I give an ultimate opinion on that. As it stands so far, I do like them mourning one of their own. It's just pushing us to all the way. I'm not sure if I land with that. But we can discuss that more in season 2. Celebrimbor and Elrond scene was fantastic. I don't even remember exactly what they're discussing, but I enjoy their chemistry. Numenor finally decides to help the Southlands by the end of episode 4. We jump to episode 5. Wow. There's a beautiful little Half-Foot song at the beginning of the thing, and I'm just going to say it here because I think it's pretty obvious. No, this is the spoiler section. You should have watched the show already. I wrote Gandalf saves the Half-Foots because it is Gandalf, and I knew this by episode 5, so I wrote Gandalf. Even though they tried to trick me later on, but I was not fooled. So, there's these little wargs, whatever they're called, little dog things come after them, and Gandalf saves them. Galadriel training scene and sexism. So, also another thing I saw come up was the whole idea of Galadriel, right? I touched on it in a non-spoiler. But here's the thing, even if you want to be pedantic about it, because sure, there are certain movies and stuff that have come out lately where it's like, oh, a woman in high heels beats 5-6 foot guys when she's like super skinny. Like, no. I'm sorry, but no. It's, no, it's laughable. No. But with Galadriel, for instance, when she does this training scene, first off, if we can accept what Legolas does in the films, then I can accept what Galadriel does here. But secondly, Galadriel's been fighting nonstop for centuries and centuries now. She has the experience. But on top of that, even if you really wanted to be truly and utterly pedantic about it, she even goes out of her way to say strength is not the key to swordplay. So if you really wanted to stick with that, all the men that she trains in that scene could be stronger than her physically. But swordplay is not about strength. It's about finesse, technique. So she still schools them all. And I think that works beautifully. It's a great scene. I really enjoyed it. And anybody who calls that scene sexist or girl power, you are the problem. Ferzadon and Keeman scene. I think that's the guy with the beard and the younger guy. Basically just a scene of, oh, you're gonna work with the elves and stuff, and you're gonna listen to your queen who's saying to do this, and he's like, this, he starts talking about like the economic and political benefits of doing this. Like if they help the Southlands, then they're eternally obligated to help Numenor, and that'd be good for them, and blah 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 blah. It was a nice little Game of Thrones-esque conspiring scene, I guess. The High King and Elrond have some interesting scenes together as well. High King, I don't have anything else to say beyond that. I had something to say. I don't remember now. Isidore has nothing that he's willing to sacrifice for. So it's interesting because he gets kicked off of the. They're supposed to be like boat people, but he gets them kicked off. He's not willing to sacrifice what he needs to sacrifice to get the job done. But this is Isildur. So I just saw this little bit of poetic irony. Because at some point there will be something he's willing to sacrifice everything else for. But it'll be corrupted, distorted, and bad. Which is the ring, of course. Episode 6 was a big fight. Could not care. The mother gets stabbed. She's okay, though. I didn't mention Adar at all, but Adar is like an elf that is helping the orcs, and I think he's one of the most fascinating aspects of the season. There's this idea, I think, given by Adar, that even the orcs are part of God's plan, which is true, which I thought was cool. And there's a big volcano eruption at the end of episode 6, because we have to make Mordor. So, episode 7, Elrond and Doran say goodbye. Everybody is relatively okay considering, which I find a little silly. Like, there's like barely a scratch on Galadriel. The Queen of Numenor is like blinded, but then she's not. It's a little bit confusing, but everybody just looks pretty much okay considering what just happened. I just wrote Halffoot's being the heart of this show. Or this franchise, I should say. Because there's a lot of sweet scenes in that episode. Then we move on to episode 8. There's some nice Elrond and Galadriel moments. We also learn for distinctive proof. I mean, there's these 3 cultists that are looking for Sauron. They think they found it with Gandalf, but no, it is Gandalf. Though he doesn't call himself that yet. Interesting scene between Halbrand and Celebrimbor. Eleanor and Gandalf have a great scene together about, because there is free will even among the Maiar. And it's why Melkor went bad. He had free will. Same with Sauron. He had free will. So, I mean, and we see with Saruman later on that Saruman can be corrupted, it can become evil. So could Gandalf, but he chooses to remain in the light. Because he's afraid that he's going to become evil, or that he is already, because he has all this awesome power. But it is Halffoot that reminds him that, no, it is you who makes that choice. Every day, every second, you are the one that gets to determine what you are. Much in the same way that Gandalf would later say to another hobbit, that, what you do with the time that is given. That's how I quite enjoyed that. And then we could have like the big moment, which is that Halbrand is Sauron. Just a big twist. It's not really a twist. Kind of saw that coming. More of the point of the scene is how Galadriel feels about that. We go from that to this vision world where she's getting to talk to her brother again, but it's actually Sauron manipulating her. So that was great. All of that, phenomenal. And then there's also a bit of this thing of, because it does say in the Silmarillion for a time, I don't know if it's Silmarillion, but one of the Tolkien works, that for a time Sauron was remorseful over what he helped Melkor do. But the thing about Sauron, and I'm sure we'll see more of this in season 2, Sauron may feel regret and remorse for what he's done, but he doesn't actually repent and try to change who he is. He feels bad that things got so bad, but he still thinks the best way to help people and make it right is to be in control of everything. So it is an interesting thing of trying to humanize Sauron. Sauron is more capable of being humanized than I think Melkor is, because Melkor is basically a demigod, whereas Sauron would be the equivalent of Gandalf and all of them. He's a really powerful Maiar, basically. But Melkor of this universe, for all intents and purposes, is basically Satan, right? And Sauron's just the second command to Satan. So it is an interesting thing there, where he does feel regret. And maybe he's lying, but there is a bit of it where it sounds like it's honest. Where he does regret a lot of things that happened during the First Age. But he doesn't actually want to atone for any of that, nor face responsibility for his actions. His priorities have simply changed, and the ways about helping the world have changed. But it is interesting to consider with him, I suppose. By the end of the episode, Galadriel and the other elves basically come to the conclusion that the rings will be for the elves. And it'll be like checks and balances in governments. Because 1 ring will completely and utterly corrupt, 2 will just be constant infighting, but 3 can uphold the balance between each other. So that is the idea. How will that go in Season 2 and foreseen seasons after that? I guess we shall see. But that's pretty much it for my thoughts on Rings of Power Season 1, which overall, I don't know what I was expecting. I've heard a lot of bad things, but it's not bad. It is fine. A lot of it I did not care about. The most invested I was that final episode. Like, I thought throughout, like, just was a good episode, was the last episode of Rings of Power. But it does have me excited for Season 2. So hopefully I enjoy Season 2 immensely. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, until next time. Man, how do I end this outro? Well, I don't know. Let's do something nerdy and cringy. Iluvatar's blessings. There you go. Have a good one.